mushroom cultivation workshop today. Caine Barlow has been a fungi educator and mycologist, and he's had an interest in psychedelic fungi and all things fungi since the early 90s. He's been cultivating fungi since around the 2000s, and he's had a lot of interest in ethnobotany and other plant medicines. And many of you have probably seen Caine Barlow from the Entheogenesis TV channel, where he is frequent. Lots of videos that are frequently viewed. So we're going to introduce Caine Barlow for the mushroom cultivation workshop.
Thank you, Caine.
I find that well done. Yes. For the time being, I will then let you know, Ron.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hi. This is a nice small group. Excellent. Before we begin the workshop, I'm just going to acknowledge country. So acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting. The traditional land of the Witchable Wayable people of the Bundjalung Nation. I pay my respects to custodians of the old ways, today's leaders, and the knowledge holders of tomorrow. Sovereignty was never ceded, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I also acknowledge the custodians of plant and fungi knowledge, the long lineage of knowledge holders whose wisdom has been passed down to us across time, space, and through culture. So this is a home mushroom cultivation workshop. This is an introductory session. And before I begin, I'm curious to know how many people here have tried their hands at mushroom cultivation. Yep, quite a few of you. Okay. How well did you all go? Yeah, you grew some mushrooms? Nice, excellent. So an overview of the workshop. So this is basically about learning to grow your own mushrooms for food, health, and mind. I'm sure you'll be able to read between the lines where necessary, otherwise I'll probably be hinting pretty heavily anyway. The techniques covered are then for culinary mushrooms, so talking about oyster mushrooms, wine cap mushrooms, shiitake, wood bluets. Medicinal fungi, turkey tail, reishi, etc. And citizen science, so various species. You can use these techniques to grow a variety of different species, whatever takes your interest. So I like to kind of encourage people to think about their intention when they're growing mushrooms. So what are you growing mushrooms for? As a slow food? As a medicine? Are you growing mushrooms just for the sake of growing mushrooms? Because they're beautiful things. But also as part of cultivation, we can help to contribute to taking pressure off wild mushroom populations. So by growing, beautiful wood-loving mushrooms in your backyard, you're taking pressure off other populations, other patches. Potentially also the preservation of interesting genetics. There's some really interesting fungi out there, and we don't know a lot about them. And it's just kind of nice to be able to forage them, learn how to grow them, and then perhaps grow them up to a point where you're able to then share that. Again, coming back to citizen science. There's a whole lot of learning through interaction with growing mushrooms. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to experiment. Growing a bunch of mold, that's perfectly fine. Hopefully you learn something from it. Also, and this is one of the things that I love about growing mushrooms, is passing on my knowledge and my experience to then other people. I started out growing mushrooms getting close to 20 years ago. I found a beautiful kind of population of mushrooms in my local forest, and I wanted to be able to preserve those genetics. So I dived in the deep end. I tried to learn how to do tissue culturing straight off the bat. I grew a lot of mold, I made a lot of mistakes. And hopefully by passing on some information tonight, I can help you avoid those. So a little bit of a background. So the kingdom fungi. I'm always worried about the language around fungi. We kind of start to communicate ideas that might start to put people off. So I like to try to explain a little bit about fungi, what they are and their life cycle. So fungi are incredibly diverse and they're a really, really ancient kingdom. They derive nutrients from decomposition. So they grow in things that are rotting and moulding in the forests, or dung that is starting to break down, leaves that are starting to break down. They exist within their food. You can go into any forest, you can lift some leaves and sticks, and I will guarantee you will find some nice white thready kind of mycelium. The mycelium is the actual mushroom. It's the main part of the organism. The mushroom is just the fruit. The kingdom fungi are massive. You've got fungi that are single-celled, so yeasts, people who grow bread or brew beer. You're dealing with fungi. Then you have complex fungi as well. Multicellular, long filamentous cells, with each cell containing double nuclei. These things have really evolved. They're quite advanced. There's a lot of genetics going on. There are chemical warehouses that are exuding enzymes that are breaking down things that a lot of other organisms haven't yet evolved to be able to do. Most fungi share their environment. Some compete, and some exist in symbiosis. Mushrooms distribute by spores. So like I was explaining, the mushroom is just simply the fruiting body. It's a structure that fungi have evolved to lift the sporing part of the organism up from the ground to a point where it can then distribute the spores into the breeze or the environment around it, and then the spores can be spread from there. So this might be on animals, insects, our shoes when we're foraging, and then at some point those spores will land somewhere and they'll germinate. The hyphae will spread through its substrate, and hopefully at some point it'll meet another hyphae from the same species, and hopefully that other hyphae will be compatible. The fungi need to be able to combine in this sense in order to be able to become mature fungus. So this whole thing about having two nuclei is really quite important for fungi. It then has all the genetic toolkit that it needs to form a mushroom, create spores, and then distribute those spores. So we've got this circular kind of narrative going on. It's a good idea to have an understanding of how this works as part of your cultivation journey, I feel anyway. But fungi also need the correct environmental triggers. Some fungi like dung, and they like warmth and humid environments, whereas others like really cool, damp environments. They're kind of dark, but maybe slightly humid and warm. There are other triggers. There's light, humidity, fresh air, heat, cold, numerous triggers that you need to kind of think about. And this is another illustration of the fungi life cycle. So you've got the spores germinating, they meet within the substrate, and at some point will form mushrooms. I feel it's good to have a really nice, a good thorough understanding, maybe not thorough, but at least a rounded understanding of their life cycle. So this, so fungi cultivation is a fine art. There's really simple techniques, and there's also really, really complicated techniques. Today I'm just going to demonstrate some really nice simple techniques to if you've never grown mushrooms before, just to get you started. But usually, and this is a bit of a question that pops up, but usually we're just cultivating a single species. So when you're out foraging, when you're looking at a mushroom patch, there are multiple fungi there growing in that one patch. And they kind of pass the baton to each other. One fungus will break down the substrate to a certain point, and then another fungus will go, oh, I can now break down those compounds. And then we'll start to break down the compounds for another fungus, and it goes on and on. So quite typically in an area you'll have multiple fungi doing multiple things, and it's really quite, it's amazing. They're sharing that space also with bacteria. Some fungi are known to farm bacteria for particular reasons. We're not entirely certain why. And there's also relationships between insects and arthropods. Psilocybin, for example, evolved as a deterrent for insects, or perhaps because they really enjoyed it. But yeah, let your knowledge of your kind of target species guide you in how you want to go ahead and cultivate. And this graphic is just to illustrate kind of the process going from spores to mycelium to then mushroom. And again, to just kind of re-illustrate that. The mushrooms, the life cycle starts with spores. We then grow the mycelium. We then grow what's called spawn. And then from that spawn, we grow the mushrooms. Depending on where you start, it can be a long, sometimes uncertain process. I hope that my workshop tonight kind of helps make it easier. But within the history of mushroom cultivation, people have been observing mushrooms for a long, long time. And at certain points have realised that certain aspects of their life cycle. So with shiitake, for example, so this illustration here on the right hand side is a photo of a group of logs that have been inoculated with shiitake mushrooms. But someone at some point realised if I leave a log underneath the shiitake mushroom, the spores hopefully will land on that log, will then inoculate that log, and mycelium will grow through it, and then I can grow shiitake from those. And over in time, that became an industry in Japan. So in Japan, they've been cultivating shiitake in this way for like over 1,000 years. People in Europe worked out the same thing with the woody mushrooms. They realised if they stacked logs underneath clusters of woody, the spores would land on the log, and then they could cultivate those mushrooms from that. Same with field mushrooms in Europe. In the 1600s, people realised that they could transplant field mushrooms into dung and then work out, and then from that point cultivate large crops in a controlled environment to then grow agaricus mushrooms. In the 70s, this interest in cultivating mushrooms advanced suddenly, quite rapidly, with the evolution of a whole heap of scientific techniques. And a lot of amateurs who are willing to dive in and really explore and experiment. And now, it's become really quite easy to cultivate mushrooms. You can get on the internet. There's heaps of techniques that you can learn about, read about. And you can get online by kits, by spores, by cultures, by liquid cultures. These are just a few books. If you're looking into looking for books that you might want to read on mushroom cultivation just to kind of help you along the way. You've got books like Mushroom Cultivator by Paul Stamets and Jeff Chilton, which is a fantastic resource, but it's very, very science heavy. On the other hand, you've got Mycelium Running, also by Paul Stamets, which is really, really quite simple, really, really grounded, and its techniques about growing mushrooms in the backyard amongst wood chips, or other simple techniques. The Trade Cotter book in the bottom left-hand corner. Sorry, you probably can't read those quite well. It's alright. Organic Mushroom Farming and Microremediation. I highly recommend this book. Trade Cotter has this whole philosophy around it. You should be able to cultivate mushrooms in your kitchen. And I have the same philosophy. Radical Mycology is the same. Lots of really down-to-earth, really easy mushroom cultivation techniques. And then the Milkwood book, which has a really lovely section on cultivating mushrooms as well, using kind of similar techniques that I'm going to demonstrate tonight. And then I've recently written a book, so I'm going to spruik my book. It's called The Wakeful Mushroom Cultivation Journal. So this is shiitake mushrooms grown from grain spawn. Now, spawn. I'll come back to spawn. So there are a bunch of mushroom cultivation strategies that you can follow. If you're an absolute beginner and just want to kind of ease into cultivating your mushrooms slowly, you can start by purchasing a kit. The kit might cover something like this, which is a big bag of myceliated grain mixed with coffee or straw or something else. And all you have to do is cut open the bag, mist it, and mushrooms will just grow straight out. It's really nice and easy, but it's a little bit cost prohibitive, really. Most people don't really get many mushrooms out of it, but it's a nice way to start. Or you can purchase spawn, and again this is spawn, and then using techniques that I'm going to show you, you can then grow this out on cardboard and or straw, and then grow mushrooms from that. If you want to get really advanced, you can go ahead and make your own spawn, starting from liquid culture, then inoculating the spawn, or you can get really advanced and go to agar liquid cultures and then to your bulk substrates. I'm not going to demonstrate the agar technique tonight or liquid cultures. I might have to apply to MardiGrass to do maybe an advanced workshop for that. Spawn, just to kind of clear up this terminology, spawn is a substrate that can be easily broken up to spread mycelium. So this is millet, and it's been inoculated with oyster mushrooms, and mycelium has grown through that. And then from this point you can mix it with a bulk substrate, so straw or wood chips, or numerous other things, and then grow your mushrooms from that. One of the benefits of using spawn is that the nutrients from the grains are really nutrient dense, but the nutrients also contribute to your growth, to how large your yield is that you're going to produce, how many mushrooms you want to grow. All commercial spawn is grown on grain, but there's now lots of people selling spawn that's just on sawdust. And this is particularly like with the wood-loving species, so shiitake or wine caps. You can easily increase the amount of spawn as well. which is kind of one benefit of it. You can expand, you can take that, you could potentially expand that out through multiple bags of grains. The kind of grains that we use are rye, wheat, corn, sorghum, millet, wild birdseed, or even a combination of grains and mixtures. The thing with working with grains and spawn is that you do need to pressure cook, and that's kind of where this whole kind of intermediate advanced element comes in. So let's look at some really simple options. The simplest technique that I really like to communicate to people is the cardboard cultivation technique. You can then also do garden cultivation, you can do PF tech, and then liquid culture to grain spawn and then growing that in monotubs. Some environments limit contamination. Contamination is what we do not want. We do not want other fungi coming into our grow environment and ruining what we're doing. So starting out some cultures on cardboard helps to limit the amount of contamination that you get. When I first started, I started working with agar plates, and they would just get contaminated time and time again. I was trying to culture mushrooms from the environment. So I was picking mushrooms and I was trying to do tissue cultures straight onto agar. And quite often there are other fungi growing on your fungi. So I found myself growing the other fungi, not the fungi that I wanted. Whereas putting stem buds, for example, onto cardboard, allow the mycelium from the stem bud to reach out and to start growing across the cardboard, limiting then that amount of contamination. Fungi are fairly specialised in breaking down particular compounds, so cellulose and lignins from in plant products. And a few other organisms can do this. Complex fungi can. Some of the simple fungi can't. Some bacteria can break down cellulose, but it's the lignins. The lignins are highly, highly complex, really long, complicated chemical structures. And it's taken the white-rotting fungi to work out how to do it. So we can take advantage of some of these plant materials to then grow our cultures. So onto things like cardboard or clean wood chips, hessian, cotton, and even straw or sugarcane mulch. So this, for example, is a piece of mycelium it's a chunk of mushroom that I found in one of my local parks. It was growing in amongst the wood chips. I collected it, broke it up, placed it on a bit of cardboard, and as you can see, the mycelium is just going crazy. It's really loving that cardboard. Whereas doing that onto agar, it would just be a mess. It would be really quite challenging to deal with. And at this point, it's probably worth just pointing out that mushrooms are just mycelium. They're just really quite sophisticated, specialised ordering of mycelium. But they're close enough to the main mycelium in the mushroom body to then realise, oh, I need nutrients. And at that point, it kind of despecialises and starts to reach out with new mycelial threads and grab onto the nearest food source. So in this case, the food source is cardboard. Before doing this, it's a good idea to treat the cardboard, just in case there are other things on that cardboard. You might kind of have spores from other things that are there that may potentially cause trouble. So we have a number of processes that we can do The simplest is simply just to boil the cardboard. So just break it up into chunks and just boil it in the saucepan for about 10 to 20 minutes, and that should be enough to kill off any of the spores or organisms, insects that may be growing on it, living on that cardboard. You can pasteurize it, which pasteurization is the process of letting something sit at heat, so between 60 to 80 degrees for about an hour. You can also use hydrogen peroxide, which is quite easy to come by. You can go to the pharmacist, you can get a solution of 3% hydrogen peroxide, and you just dilute that down to 1%. So to 1 litre you add, was it 10 mils? 100 mils. I can't math. So to 1 litre you add 10 mils. It's there, I've written it here. By the way, feel free to just take photographs of the slides as I go. And you can also ferment wood chips. So if you have a pile of wood chips, maybe you've had a tree cut down that's been mulched, you might be aware of a council pile of wood chips. In my local area, the council has like a whole area where you can just drive up and just take wood chips by the bucket load. But you need to ferment those wood chips because you might have, again, other things growing on it. Insects, you might have bacteria, you might have other fungi that are already living within those wood chips. And this is where my demonstration point comes in. Ronnie. Yeah, can you hold the mic?
Yep.
Well, can you hear me at the back without the mic?
It's better with the
I reckon
It's better with the mic though.
Yeah, no, let's do that. Okay.
I will hold it up in 10 seconds. Is that? Put my phone away.
Do that. This is a little bit of a mock demonstration because I'm from Melbourne and it was a bit of a problem flying with. I had to travel light. And I went to the local store to buy some oyster mushrooms and they didn't have any, so I'm just playing pretend with some other mushroom species. But I did bring on a whole bunch of cardboard that I've boiled. So I boiled this for 20 minutes. It just came from, I can't remember what kind of box it was. I think it was an always fresh box. My housemate gets always fresh, so I always have cardboard around. I have a plastic container that I'm going to use for this. It doesn't have to be a plastic container. You might want to use like a glass container or something else. Even probably another cardboard box would be fine as well. And this is kind of a bit of a lasagna style technique where you take some of these layers of cardboard, layer it into the box, and I'm also going to, can someone pass this around? And what's going around is one of these that I did 2 weeks ago.
It's got mycelium.
All mycelium growing on cardboard. Feel free to also open the box, have a smell.
Is that legal, Caine?
It is.
That's okay then, it's legal.
This is illegal.
It's entirely legal.
Entirely legal. No, it actually is legal.
What a pity.
I left the illegal one at home. Let's pretend these are oyster mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms are a wood-loving mushroom. They will grow. They're quite very vigorous. They're aggressive growers. So we're pretending these are oyster mushrooms. But what you can do is you can break up the oyster mushroom, and preferably the stem. Just use the stem of the oyster mushroom. Try not to use the cap, because for some reason every time I use the cap, and it's something to do with, I think, other things kind of getting into the gills and then being a point of contamination. So try not to use the gills. Use the stem, and then stem, something like that. You can do it as fine or as large chunks as you want, depending on the size of the oyster mushroom material you have. And then just layer it in the bottom of the tub like this. So, if I, yeah, you get the idea. Something like that. Add another layer. Add a bit more material. Like so. Add another layer.
And so in theory, would this work for cubensis or other random mushrooms?
This will not work with cubensis.
There you go.
But this will work for Psilocybe tuberculosa.
There you go. It's a wood-loving.
Which is a wood-loving species.
Wood-loving species.
And yeah. But yeah, like with Tuberculosa does grow up in this area. It's probably around this time of year up in places like Raggington Mountains, for example, or around other wooded areas where it gets nice and cold. You may be able to find it. I do have foraging information that I can show later on, question time.
Or they can grab the fly down here with a southern.
Yeah, well, I will probably do a large demo or something like that at that particular event, if I'm allowed. I'm sure.
Sure.
And so we just keep layering.
Is that tub getting around? Yep.
It's up the back. And that's essentially the idea. So, and then put the lid back on. And then within 2 weeks, it should look something like this tub that's getting around. And then hopefully within probably another 2 to 4 weeks, you even have mushrooms growing out of that tub.
So like 6 weeks in total for fruiting, something like that?
Yeah, that's right. And that's what I pretty well illustrated here on the slide. So, thank you. Feel free to take a photograph. But yeah, so we've got the plastic container, the mushrooms, the cardboard. You can just slice up the cardboard however you want, boil it, chop up the mushroom, layer it, and then let the mycelium myceliate the cardboard, and then hopefully in time it will produce mushrooms. Yes, you do need to clean the container. If you're using one of your household containers, yeah, give it a clean beforehand. Hot water and detergent should be enough to clean it up. If you're using the takeaway food containers straight from the supermarket, you don't have to, because they're usually sterile within their plastic wrapping. If you're using those kind of glass food containers, yeah, again, just hot water and a bit of detergent. It should be enough to clean them. And this is that same thing. It's not that actual tub, but it's this demo. Just happily fruiting. I actually forgot about these. I did this at another workshop and then left them in a corner and then was just cleaning up and then came across them. Was happily just fruiting on their own.
So you don't have to put holes in a container, they'll fruit from under the lid?
Yep. Normally at about probably 4 weeks when it's fully myceliated, I recommend people just crack the corner. Just open the corner, let a bit of fresh air in. Fresh air is a fruiting trigger. And yeah, but with oyster mushrooms in particular, they are just going to go for it anyway. And they can just grow and grow and grow. I do have another photo, and I should include it in these slides, but of like this mushroom that grew like this long, and then grew the final mushroom because I'd left it somewhere and it was trying to get to the light. Quite impressive.
So you can keep it closed and you don't need to like acid or...
No, you can keep it closed. But again, like I said, when it gets about 4 weeks, when it's fully myceliated, open the lid and let a bit of fresh air. But oyster mushrooms will do their own thing and just fruit regardless. And we'll pop the lid off. So, if you're growing a cold-loving species on cardboard, you might want to put the container in the fridge for about 4 weeks, and it will do its own thing and hopefully produce mushrooms. You don't have to use cardboard. You can just use old clothing. So this is just, an old t-shirt, and I've just kind of rolled it up with some bits of oyster mushroom, and it's just gone ahead and done its own thing. But what else can you do with your little mushroom, with your cardboard grow? You can then potentially add this into your garden with your wood chips. So you can inoculate the cardboard using stem butts. So, okay, since we're talking about sorcery, you can find your Severocanosa. People will quite often just break off the stem butts and dispose of them, but you can add those stem butts to cardboard. And the stem butts will then myceliate, and the mycelium will grow through the cardboard. You can use mushroom fragments as well, bits of the stem. I wouldn't recommend the cap. You can also, if you've got a really nice patch and you want to keep growing it somewhere else, use the wood chips or the mycelium from that patch on cardboard. Which is kind of what's going on here. I just grabbed some leaf litter and a few bits of wood chips and left it on the cardboard. And you can see it's kind of doing its thing. It's mycelium kind of spreading out, growing. But to kind of come around circle on this, this is a really good low-tech way to do tissue culturing. So rather than trying to tissue culture from mushroom onto agar, you could just do the same thing onto the cardboard and allow the mycelium to extend. You can also use hessian, cotton, wood chips and keep expanding. So again, there's a bit of mycelium growing through some wood chips. And you can grab those wood chips and then place them onto cardboard to do this technique. You might want to grow some other types of mushrooms. So to come around back to oyster mushrooms or wine cap mushrooms, you can purchase spawn for some of these species. Actually, I have a big block. Where'd it go? Here. So we can use this to inoculate cardboard as well, and then to grow our oyster mushrooms on cardboard. This is oyster mushroom. But it could also potentially be wine caps or lepistanuta, like wood bluets. You might know somebody who's really quite good at this, and you can ask them for some mycelium or something else. And then you can expand this out however you choose onto cardboard and wood chips. Since we're all here for philosophy, are we? You don't have to put your hand up for that. But there are some good groups. Wood Lovers United, for example, if this is your interest area on Facebook, is great. And we talk about these kind of things all the time. And some people are actively selling little kits of mycelium on cardboard or spawn to then be able to do this in your own backyard. Probably don't do it in your own backyard. To make spawn, you typically either start with a liquid culture. You can get online, you can go to websites like Aussie Mushroom Supplies or Root Lab, and you can buy liquid cultures of legal species anyway. So oyster mushrooms, stropharia, wine caps or other things. You might know somebody who has making their own liquid cultures. You can ask them. But yeah, so you can get liquid cultures, and then you can inoculate some grain, and then from the grain you can then grow on cardboard or straw. If you want to get advanced, and maybe we'll do this again next year, we can use agar to liquid culture and then to grains. And this is just to reiterate just the different substrates that you can use: cardboard, any plant-based material really. So hessian, cotton. I've used t-shirts, I've used jeans, denim jeans to grow mushrooms. Most hardwoods, this is another question that comes up, most hardwoods are fine. So either as chips or as sawdust. Eucalyptus is typically the best. It's fairly easy to access in Australia. You can even use like tea trees, so Melaleuca and at this moment as well. Some of them are a little bit, have antifungals in them, which may inhibit the mushrooms a little bit. Avoid woods that are really dense, really tight fibres that have lots of resin, so pine trees, softwoods for example, good. Unless it's really well decomposed softwood, in which case you're going to have to treat it anyway, pasteurize it. Or wood that has lots of antifungals. So some of the tea trees are really dense in antifungals. But this is an example then of the mycelium grown through wood chips and straw. You can see the mycelium on the top. It's very happy. And then in the bottom container, I'm then mixing this through a bulk substrate. So I'm adding this then to layers of the chips. And in the end, there's that kind of final layer of, I'm using cocoa coir in that case. So cocoa coir is also quite helpful. I keep talking about stropharia, wine caps. These are wine caps. These are really delicious eating. Really aggressive wood-loving species. They do grow up here really happily. This is lepistanuta, another really delicious wood-loving mushroom. Be careful foraging for these because they do look like cortinarias, which are known to be poisonous. And this is Psilocybe sphaeruginosa, which it can also be grown using these wood techniques. So once you've started your grow with something like this, you will then probably want to bulk it out. You can break this up once it's fully myceliated, and then you can extend it, add it to more wood chips. So like what I'm doing here, you grow it to a certain point, and then you can expand it out further. And you can keep doing this again and again to a point where then you're happy adding it into your garden, for example. Or just letting it fruit out of the tub itself. And we refer to this process as bulking out. So this becomes your initial inoculant, and you then want to bulk it out further. You can do simple things like 50-50% straw and sawdust. So those of you who like oyster mushrooms, this is a really great way to bulk out your oyster mushroom spawn. So you would pasteurize the combined sugarcane and sawdust. Or you can ferment wood chips and do it that way as well. You can then pasteurize. You can also use barbecue pellets. For those of you who don't know what barbecue pellets are, sure most of you do. These are barbecue pellets. I might hand these around. You can get these from most hardware stores. You pour hot water on them and they expand, and you get like all this sawdust and fungi. Love it. And these are the pellets. And just to explain pasteurization in a bit more detail. Actually, we have covered this, haven't we? This is just a more detailed slide. Maybe I'll skip this one a little bit, but if you want to take a photograph, feel free.
How do you ferment the wood chips?
How do you ferment the wood chips? Good question. You just soak them in water. Just dump them in like a bucket or one of those big 50-litre tubs. Just cover them with water and let them sit for 2 weeks. At a certain point, you'll see a little bit of bubbling. You'll get a fermentation happening. So you'll get a bit of bubbling that will occur, and then at a certain point, you'll start to get a pong, a smell. You'll know that smell. It's not very pleasant. And at that point, you can just pour off the water and give them a really, really good rinse. And then they're ready to go. You can then take your spawn and mix it through.
When you forage your mushrooms, how you make sure like nothing else grows? Like how you make sure that the mushrooms are growing?
That's what these steps are. These steps
Won't
are...
there be other stuff like growing on your mushrooms?
What do you mean, on the mushrooms themselves?
Like the one that you forage, yeah. Like won't that be contaminated there or I don't know.
There may be contamination there, but I'm trying to kind of use substrates in these examples where it's the substrate that limits the contamination. So as long as you're using mycelium that's really happy. With the grains though, it can be a little bit of a problem, particularly if you've got insects climbing through. Yeah, it's just kind of run of the mill. But by pasteurizing the bulk substrate that we're working with, that does help to limit that. So the fermentation of the wood chip, for example, gets rid of all of the other, because it's an abiotic environment, so it kills off anything that needs oxygen. And any spores, any other mycelium, any insects that are living on that should be killed as part of the process. Again, we use heat for that reason as well. So we use pasteurization to kill all of the other organisms. Pasteurization, the 60 to 80 degree process is good though, because it keeps the thermophilic organisms that are protective. If for some reason they stop other contaminating organisms coming into this picture. And lime is also quite helpful. You can find wood chips everywhere. I had a good day that day. If you can find fresh wood chips, you don't even really need to treat them that much. If they're freshly chipped, you just let them sit for a few weeks, soak them for about 48 hours, and they're usually good to go. It's the older wood chips, the ones that are starting to look a bit grey or dark brown, that you need to pasteurize, you need to ferment. Or you can use the pasteurization process or the hydrogen peroxide. Right. Okay. Okay. I'm going to introduce the PF Tech. PF Tech, I can probably hold it, but I'm going to need you to stay. Okay. The PF Tech was created by Professor Philosophy Fanaticus. This is a fantastic technique for beginner cultivators. You just need some glass, 4 glass jars, essentially. And then the recipe is 1 part of brown rice flour, 1 part water, and 2 parts vermiculites. So I'm going to demonstrate this very, very quickly. This is a very, very unclean pot. I would recommend cleaning the pot that you use to do this. And here's my visual. So when we say 1 part, it's essentially just 1 jar full. So I like these jam jars, or you can get the mason jars, but these are the ones without the shoulder, so it's a fully straight side. Fill it till just below the lid. This is vermiculite, available in most hardware stores. Yeah, this is brown rice flour. This is an expensive one. You can get a cheaper one, go for that.
Caine did all of this in my kitchen recently, and the cats loved it. It was just had them confounded what this gentleman was doing in the kitchen all day.
Okay, 2 parts. One. Whoa! Okay, 2. And then 1 part water. Got a bigger spoon. And then mix it all up. Mix it quite well. Well, now that it's mixed up, I can, right? slide another. I'm then going to. So this recipe will then give you 4 jars worth of substrate. If you're growing a woodlogging species, you can also add the sawdust. So those little sawdust pellets that were going around are great for this. You add the hot water, let them expand, and then you can probably add half a cup of sawdust. And then fill each jar till just below the lip. And you can inoculate these jars using either spore syringes or liquid cultures. Fill it full of vermiculite at the top. So that's why you add the main bulk of the substrate to just below the lip. And then you fill the rest of it with vermiculite. Vermiculite adds as a protective layer. Vermiculite has no nutrients at all. So spores land on the vermiculite, they won't germinate. It's a barrier. It acts as a barrier. About half a cup of sawdust. So half a part. Yeah.
To the whole lot or to one jar?
To the whole lot.
To the whole lot.
So it's 1 part brown rice flour, 2 parts vermiculite, 1 part water, and if you want you can add a half part then of the sawdust. Or you can even substitute out the brown rice flour and just use sawdust instead of the brown rice flour. Hence why I said at the beginning, feel free to experiment with these techniques.
And that's the only way they ever got created, really, through experimentation like this.
All of this stuff comes from the magic mushroom underground. People just experimenting. The final part of this is to put on a layer of foil. Now, you can either leave it like this, but I recommend taping it up with either some paper tape or you could even use
Like a band or oh.
no, like micropore tape as well. So just attach it like that. Like so. And then you can pressure cook these. So you put them in a pressure cooker for between 40 minutes to an hour. Or you can steam them. If you've got a steamer, you can just have them in a pot full of water to get one of those kind of little stands that sits within a pot. You sit them on the stand, fill the pot to a certain point full of water and just let it steam for about 2 hours.
So that recipe that you outlined before would make 4 of these, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So those parts add up to 4 in total. To inoculate, so again, and you can grow lots of things using this technique, everything from oyster mushrooms through to shiitake, to lion's mane, reishi, to psilocybe cubensis. I mean, that's what they originally, this technique was developed for, was psilocybe cubensis. But growers have realised that they can grow lots and lots of different other things on this as well, including even cordyceps. I've seen people grow cordyceps on this, so if that's your interest. you can buy lots of liquid cultures now online. If you ask around your community, you probably find someone who knows someone who is also supplying liquid cultures of various interesting species. At some point you'll probably get a syringe like this. Most people don't do spore syringes anymore. Quite typically it's just people just sharing liquid cultures. I'm going to do this out in the open air because you can if you're really clean and quick. I'm going to spray the tip of the syringe here with a solution that is 70% methylated spirits, 30% water, and that will effectively sterilize the tip of that. When you buy these from someone like Root Lab or Aussie Mushroom Supply, also supply the needle.
What gauge is that?
This is an 18 gauge needle. And I've even seen examples of where people have been supplying interesting spore syringes and they'll do the same thing. They package them professionally these days. You need to be quick doing this
To keep it sterile.
to keep it sterile. You need to then also remove that cap really quick and straight on with the needle. And then I recommend squirting out a little bit.
Not just to look cool.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I'm not going to spray it into the audience though. Aluminium foil is fairly clean, it's fairly sterile, straight out of the packet, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this. But you then can inject, say, 1 ml of the liquid culture, move on to another quarter of the jar, inject more, another ml. You do this after you've pressure cooked it or steamed it, by the way, just to reiterate that. And then inject another ml. Put the cap back on your needle. And then you let that myceliate for about 4 weeks. You will see when it's fully myceliated, it will just be all beautiful white. And then you essentially just take off that foil. Cover it with another piece of foil in the meantime, just to protect those holes. When it's fully myceliated, remove all the foil and just tap it out. So, as per the illustration, you can see I've tapped it out. It's been tapped out here, and then within about 2 to 4 weeks, it then grows. And then one of the benefits of the PF tech was then you had your own mushrooms, you could then have your own spore prints that you could then make spore syringes. The whole thing was meant to be completely cyclic. You buy the original kit and then you just keep going and going and going.
So you pack it, then you sterilize it, then you use the syringes to colonize it, and then wait how many weeks?
4 weeks.
4 weeks?
4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks. And then tap it out.
Yep. Yep, and then hopefully within a few weeks you should see tinning, and then another couple of weeks you should have mushrooms. And that's pretty much the PF tech. Yeah, bring it.
We definitely had it last night. Oh.
You can also use this is called the Spider-Man tech or the Uncle Ben tech, but you can use pre-sterilized rice using a similar technique. You just clean the surface of the rice like so.
It's a very easy adjustment on that, isn't it? It's all the hard work's done, all the sterilization's done. That's why you're doing this?
Pretty much. And then you can just inject straight into the bag.
Like so. Literally the supermarket hack.
Yeah, pretty much. Another tip is also, the first time you use a needle, it's sterile, but every subsequent use of the needle. Make sure you flame the needle, just to clean it. If you use the liquid culture at 10 mil goes, you should get 10 uses out of it. You might want to be a bit more sparing with it. You might get 20. No, you can put it in the fridge and you can keep it and come back to it. There are companies out there though now that are making this super easy. You can buy pre-sterilized bags of grain that are also that you can inoculate with your chosen mushroom. This bag is just grain. It has a self-healing injection port on it. You probably can't see it at the back, but it's got like a piece of silicone here, and you inject straight into the bag. So rather than having to go through this whole kind of tedious process of, I mean, look, I certainly don't want to put you off trying the PF10, go for it. But a bag like this costs $20. It's got a layer of grain. It's also got a layer of compost on top. So you inject into the grain becomes myceliated, and then you can just empty the whole bag out into a monotub container. If you don't know what a monotub is, it's essentially just a plastic container with some holes melted into it. You cover the holes with micropore tape. This is a mini version. Don't do it at this size. Do it at like the 50-litre plastic container size. And you can just, where this is fully myceliated, you just pour it into the bottom of the plastic tub. Let it do its thing. You might want to case it with a little bit of cocoa coir or just cocoa coir or vermiculite even, and let it myceliate. And at a certain point, you'll start getting mushrooms growing up through the casing layer. But yeah, no, these kind of innovations are fabulous, particularly if you don't want to have to deal with working with grains or liquid cultures, all those kind of intermediate or advanced techniques.
So is this the sort of the poor man's version of this?
That's right. Yeah. That's the supermarket hack. But if you want to get really nice high yields of your cubensis or your other mushrooms, this is definitely a good way to go. It's a really nice advancement on, what we used to have to do, like even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, going through that whole process of pressure cooking large bags of grain yourself, which again, I don't want to put you off doing that. That's a lot of fun in itself. But that's where you have to start being really, really clean and really careful about what you're doing. These are fantastic.
So there's a trend to making this as domestic as possible.
Yes. Techniques like this make this just super easy. It's just super accessible. That's pretty much what I want. I wanted to really cover that whole cardboard technique because it's a question that keeps coming up again and again and again, is how can I grow some of these wood-loving mushrooms at home? And hopefully I've answered some of those questions for you. But I also want to demonstrate the PM Tech, how lovely and simple it is to do, and then also growing on bulk grains is now really quite easy with the whole kits that you can access. You mix these up when it's fully myceliated and just let it do its thing in a monotile. It's super easy.
Alright, can we put our hands together for Caine? We have about 10 minutes for questions. Now I realise we could probably do an hour of questions. So I'm just giving you a caveat. We've got about 10 minutes. So is there anyone with a super... I'm going to say, yeah, well, your hand up first. So I don't think I can bring it out there, but did you want to try and scream it?
Where do you suggest you like keep them? Like in the inside, outside, in the dark, in the, what's the general?
Okay, my usual recommendation, I can probably hold it from here, thank you. My recommendation is to store them somewhere nice and warm, room temperature. Fungi like exactly the same kind of conditions that we do. They like that same temperature range. So between 15 degrees to 24 degrees. Don't let them get too hot. Fungi also don't like temperatures between 30 to 35 and upwards. The end slide. Is that the one you wanted? Well, there's the resources slide, which is also important, but I've kind of covered that. Hopefully you got photos. But I'm going to leave that one up while I answer the question. Room temperature. I store a lot of my cultures on the top of my fridge. The fridge has a really nice warm spot between the top of the fridge and the rest of the enclosure that it's in. So, just somewhere that's a consistent temperature. It's good.
We have some lovely mushrooms that grow out of dung in our paddocks.
Right.
So if we wanted to use these techniques, what would the substrate have to be then?
Out of dung?
No, that's sort of what it grows out of naturally.
At home, what would you use instead of
I would use something like the PF Tech. Dung-loving species also love the PF Tech. Like this is an overall really accessible substrate. Everything from wood-loving species to dung-loving species. And like I mentioned, I've seen people grow cordyceps on these as well. So, you know, but also you can grow dung-loving species on grains as well. They will break down grain, and that's kind of why I also mentioned like some of these kits as well, where you can inoculate the kit with your dung-loving species and let it do its thing. Case it and let it grow.
Start with spores.
You can start with spores. The trick with spores though is spore prints are quite often dirty, so there's quite often other contaminating organisms there as well, so you might get other fungi spores or bacteria. So to germinate from spores, you either have to germinate them straight on agar, which is quite complicated, unless you have like a flow hood or you're willing just to keep being persistent with using like a really dilute spore syringe or solution.
So you could use the stems then in our place? Would the stems be infected as well as the spores?
No, because the stem is already living, because it's already essentially mycelium. Once it senses the substrate, it just it starts to reach out and use mycelial threads, and that's where that cardboard and wood-loving and wood chip technique is really helpful. It allowed you to create your own cultures without having to do the spore print thing. So, I know people in the past have used spore prints or spore syringes for the PF Tech and have had success with it. You just want a really super clean spore syringe or spore print, and that could be a little tricky. Particularly from wild specimens, it gets really tricky. Other questions?
Can you do the method where, because I'm from Melbourne as well, and you know the ones that grow out of the pine needle? Could you take them out of the pine needle and rip them up and put them in that substrate and they could grow? Or do you really need like
Yeah, I would put those onto cardboard.
Yeah?
I would put those onto cardboard, let them do their thing. And then maybe add a little bit of straw and then maybe add some wood chips, and in time that should then colonise the wood chips and you should be good to go.
Cool, alright.
At some point find a pile of wood chips not on your property and inoculate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take another couple of questions.
Okay.
We've got an advanced question. I'd like to take on an advanced question and test Caine out a little. Anyone? Here we go.
Okay.
How far up north do you know about Australis?
Furthest north I'm aware of is in the Bunya Mountains.
That's an important question.
From the wood-loving mushroom paper that came out last year. The most northernmost mushroom we used in that paper was from Bunya Mountains, and that observation didn't end up on iNaturalist, but we know that it's the northernmost at the moment. But you do get other species that will gravitate towards wood as well. There's some new section Cordyspora being found way up north, so who knows? If you want to try out your citizen science chops, go for it.
Alright, another question? Yep.
When you bulb the mushrooms, do you do it before it's fruited or after it's fruited?
Sorry?
When you like bulb the mushrooms, like you said, like you
Yeah.
put it into more substrate, do you do it before they were fruited already?
You do it before it's fruited.
You can't do it after.
You can if you want. Yeah. But actually, no. Once they're fruited, that's fine. Yeah. You can do that. Yeah. Once it's fruited, it tends to lose a little bit of vigor, so it's kind of better to do it beforehand, because then it's still kind of aggressively colonising. Once it's fruited, it kind of relaxes a little bit. So, yeah. Another question.
One more.
How long do the mushrooms live? Do they only like fruit for like a day or how
That process can take. It takes up to about 2 to 4 weeks. So you get the primordia formation. That will then kind of take a week. Then you'll see the baby mushrooms. That'll be another week, and then at a certain point they really start to advance quite quickly. And then that's about a 2-week period. So from first initiation of the mushroom to the mushroom probably being too old or it's dying would be about 4 weeks. But for the visible part, it's about 2 weeks. But that's dependent on temperature too. So some, like in really cold regions, those mushrooms may take even longer to fully mature. It's dependent on species as well.
Alright, we're going to put our hands together for Caine Barlow.